And before we start any presentation, I know a lot of you are very familiar with Zoom at this point. How can you not? But I like to do a quick overview of a few of the functions so that you can interact with us throughout the webinar. I should mention that today's session will be recorded. So because it's recorded, we ask that you keep your microphones muted throughout the session just to kind of minimize feedback and get the best sound quality possible. And just because we have your microphones muted does not mean that we don't want you to interact with us. We love it when you ask us questions. You can do that through the chat. Actually, now's a good time to test it out. If you want to comment in the chat where in the world you are joining us from, and maybe let us know the weather there. Here we're in Victoria, BC, and looking out the window, it's pretty sunny for the next few minutes. I don't know if you've been to Victoria yet, but it's the kind of place where if you don't like the weather, you wait a few minutes and it changes. And I'm currently in my home office on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen. And another way you can interact with us as well is through the reactions feature. If you want to test that out right now, you can give us a round of applause or a cry laugh face or a heart reaction. Oh, awesome. I see a party reaction, a thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. And we do have people monitoring the chat throughout today's session. So any questions that you have, we might answer them during the session or at the end during the question and answer. So feel welcome to comment in the chat. And before any presentation at Royal Roads University, we like to acknowledge that we are on traditional lands. And Royal Roads University acknowledges that the campus is located on the traditional lands of the Chaseten, Esquimalt, and Lekwungen Songhees ancestors and families who have lived here for thousands of years. This land has been part of the fabric of the life of Indigenous communities long before Hatley Castle was built, and it will be long into the future. It is with gratitude that we now learn and work here where the past, the present, and the future of Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, faculty, and staff come together to work, to live, and to play. In today's session, we will be covering the application and the grad cert in professional communication management. And we have Dr. Chaseten Remillard here. He's the program head. And we also have Andrea Torres, she's the recruitment manager. And my name is Emera Angus. I'm an education advisor. And the three of us will be co-hosting the session today. And thank you again for joining us. A quick overview of the agenda for today's session. A quick get to know one another. If you haven't yet commented in the chat, let us know where you're joining us from. It's always great to see the people from all over Canada and beyond. We will also be going through a brief overview of the Royal Roads University experience, talking about program-specific information, the application program, the application process, and we will be accepting questions throughout, and we'll make sure to answer them all at the end as well. And a bit more about Royal Roads University, our values. Here at Royal Roads, we're a small campus, and it's so important to us that we have first names first. So you'll learn very quickly that we get to know you and your first name very quickly. And we believe in the importance of learning all the time. So we understand that many people are coming from diverse backgrounds, and we really acknowledge that through our flexible admission process. And we understand that life is an education, and we really do accept its credentials. And we believe also in not that division between the classroom and the real world. Here at Royal Roads, it's one and the same. So you get real world experience in the classroom. And we're also an Ashoka U Changemaker campus. And what that means is we're leaders for change and social innovation. And we've been recognized with a Ashoka U designation. And we're located in Victoria, BC, in Canada. We have about 37 million people in Canada, but we're located on an island, and the closest largest city is Vancouver. And we also are pretty mild here. So right now it's pretty moderate and mild out there. So I'm sorry if anybody is tuning in from very snowy parts of Canada. And here are some images from Royal Roads. The top left there is Hatley Castle. So you might recognize this castle from X-Men or Deadpool. So it's been featured in a few big picture movies. And we also have the Esquimalt Lagoon that we overlook, which is a beautiful, beautiful lagoon. And on the bottom left there is Charlie's Trail, one of my favorite places for lunchtime walks. So our campus is very diverse. and we've been teaching online for over 25 years. All right, I'd love to pass it over to Dr. Chaseten, and he will continue discussing our programs.
Thanks, Imara. Well, welcome to the session. I'm glad that you made it. It's been a crazy year, continues to be a little bit crazy, but some things stay the same. And the education at Royal Roads has transitioned really well onto the online platforms. A lot of our programs, as you know, were blended to begin with. And so it wasn't as much of a shock to us as other institutions, which is good for you if you're interested in coming to Royal Roads, because we've been doing this, as Imara said, for 25 years. So you're here to talk about the MA in professional communications. I'm the program head for both the MA and the BA in professional communications, and I've been at Royal Roads now for now like 7 years. So I know the place fairly well, and my expertise is in visual communications. I have a PhD from University of Calgary in communication studies, and I publish on all kinds of wacky stuff. I did an article about a year ago on Justin Trudeau's Instagram account. I did one earlier for those folks who are from Alberta on the Alberta wildfires and Rachel Notley's response to them. And I've done stuff on shark films. I'm currently thinking about trying to do a project on all the huge, like the world's largest UFO landing pad in Vulcan, and the Bigfoot or whatever across Canada. So I'm interested in the ways that images interact with society and transmit meanings and kind of connect people in different ways. So that's sort of where I come from as a scholar. As a practitioner, I have a little contracting that I've done in the past and kind of continue to do so, just on a sort of private consultancy. I've also worked with people to get folks into admissions into med school and sort of practicing with interpersonal and interview skills and so on. So that's sort of what we call like the pracademic here at Royal Roads, is that there's a lot of folks who have PhDs and do a lot of really interesting research. But there's also a lot of folks that come with a large wealth of professional experience, and they bring that into the classroom as well. So maybe we can move on to the next slide. I don't have control over the slides, so yeah. So the MAPC program really is divided, if you like, into 2 years. It's a 2-year program. It has 3 different pathways, and we'll talk about those pathways in a second. But regardless of what pathway you're on, the program runs for 2 years for everyone, no matter what choice you decide to take. And those just briefly are thesis, research paper, or course-based, right? So it doesn't matter which of those pathways you take. You start to finish with your cohort, and you stay with the cohort throughout those 2 years. So year 1, you can kind of imagine is a really important year to lay foundations. So what we do is we bring you on campus when campus opens. Depending on when you're deciding to go to Royal Roads, that campus may or may not be open for that first residency. For May, it's not going to be open this spring. That's a decision that's already been made. But we're not sure whether or not the fall residency will be on campus or not yet. We're as we all are, we're waiting to see what levels of vaccination rollouts and so on look like, and also guidance from the provincial government. But so let's call it intensive 1. So intensive 1 is that you do 3 courses at once, and those courses are designed to kind of provide you with a real strong foundation. So it's theory, method, and then what we do is an organizational case challenge that allows you to kind of bring those things together. So you work with a real world client, and you present to them some approaches to solving a problem that they might have, or a challenge that they might have, using some of the methodology and some of the theory that you've learned in your other 2 courses. So that's a really dynamic way of kind of jump starting the program. Then after that, we have a series of distance learning, and you can sort of break those into sort of distance 1 and distance 2. And I won't get into all the nitty gritty of what courses you take, because we have a slide on all the different courses, but essentially you're sort of working in those distance phases with your cohort. You have the same timing as your other classmates, and the instructor is there. The start date might be like March 15th, and it runs, typically they run for 9 weeks or 10 weeks, depending a little bit on the calendar, but usually it's about 9 or 10 weeks. And in that 9-10 weeks, you're doing team projects, you're doing, you might have to be doing some individual stuff. Your prof might have a sort of a session, every week where it's, it's not that you have to be there, but you can come and ask questions, and it might be live. They typically have video lectures that they've created. Some have podcasts. So basically you're sort of working in this environment. It's not what like back in the old days, you'd call it correspondence. I don't know if anyone ever calls it that way, it's all moved to distance. But in the olden days, it used to be called like correspondence. And I mean, olden days, we're not that old, but back when, before the internet really was something that we used on a daily basis, you would get, you'd get your sort of box of books in the mail, and you would be left on your own. You'd have an end date, but you would be sort of left on your own. That's not this model at all. This model is really about keeping you with your cohort, moving you forward, and being in an environment where the prof is there and present for you, and that you have a lot of interaction with them, even though you're at a distance. And what we found with that model is, number one, is you really make some strong connections with your cohort, and lots of people leave with very good, at very least, very good business contacts, but a lot of people have made some really good friendships, as you can imagine. And the other thing is that you also finish. And I know that seems like, everyone here is like, well, if I start, I'm going to finish. But that's actually like a pretty big deal in post-secondary, that we have a very high completion rate, which means that the people who come into our programs tend to actually finish our programs. And that's not the case for a lot of graduate programs. The attrition rate is pretty high. And so that we can confidently say, once you're in, you're likely to very likely to complete, is a really important thing about the program. And part of that, I think, is that you want to be with your cohort. I think the other part is that, like was mentioned earlier, it's a different culture at Royal Roads than a lot of other universities. Your profs. There's a high level of proximity with your professors. They know you. The admin is really small. Like we're sort of a lean organization, so there's not a lot of us to get to know, and we tend to know you. And so for that reason, we deal with you as people. And as crazy as that sounds, that's not been the experience of most people when they go to universities, especially if you go to a bigger school. I know for me, I went to McGill University as my undergrad, and literally I can tell you my student number, because that's what I used to sign off on every essay and every report that I wrote. And grad school is supposed to be different, and it is. But even in grad school, Royal Roads is markedly different than other programs. And you can kind of ask around if you know folks, and I think that would stand true to how people have felt about the program. So once you've done that, distance 1 and distance 2, you come back. So again, the reason we have you back on into the intensive, or if we're, and this now would be hopefully definitely on campus, all things considered, we'd hope to be out of the woods with the pandemic by the time the second res comes around. You'd be in Victoria and you'd be there with everyone again, and we'd have that intensive 2. And so that intensive 2 is a little bit more flexible. People are doing, depending on their pathways, those have been decided. And they're kind of, they're still there. Everyone has to do at least one course together. So there is that opportunity to come together, but there's a couple of choices depending on if your thesis or if your research paper where the other courses might fit for you, but everyone's on campus at the same time, and you get to have that experience. And then you leave that residency, or you leave that intensive, and you go into the last sort of phase of work. And again, that looks differently in terms of what the pathways, and then you finish at the 2-year mark. So if we go to the next slide, well, I think the next slide gives you the different pathways that I've been talking about. And so you can see that there's at least 24 credits or 8 classes that everyone's going to have together. And so that really builds that strong cohort. So if you're doing a thesis, what your path to graduation would look like is that you'd have 24 program course-based credits. So in other words, you would have 24 courses that are within the program of the MAPC. And then at the end of doing those 24, of which one would be in that last intensive, so you're on campus with everyone, so you're not missing out. And again, you might say, well, I'm okay with not, I'm all right if I miss. After you've been and you're in the cohort, everyone wants to have that experience. Everyone wants to be together on that. So it's a really great thing that we're close to the end of the pandemic, and we're going to be able to have on-campus residencies again in the future. But everyone kind of does that first bit of the 24, and then after that you do your thesis. So just briefly about the thesis, because I know it doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, and I'll kind of briefly touch on all 3 different pathways in the same way. But the thesis basically is sort of, it's a 3-step process. Well, I should say it's a 4-step process. The first step is that you apply for it, and the application is really, we facilitate the application for you, because in research methods, everyone is asked to create a potential proposal for a thesis, regardless of or research paper, regardless of whether or not that's your jam or if that's what you want to do. Everyone is just part of the course is that you're building that capacity to be able to create a proposal. So once you have that proposal, then after that course ends, there's about a course and a half before, and the date changes, so I don't want to put the dates out, but there's sort of about 10 or 12 weeks after that first 3 courses have ended, that you can really think about whether or not a thesis is the right direction for you. There's a thesis advisor that you can get in touch with, Dr. Philip Benini, who's Canada Research Chair in Public Ethnography. He has documentary films. Check him out. Maybe someone can drop in his name, and he has stuff. Last time I looked, I think his stuff was on Netflix. Super interesting guy. Anyways, he's the thesis advisor. So you might send him a note and say, again, if you were at a different university, it would probably be like, dear Dr. Benini. Here it'd be like, Philip, I'm interested in the thesis. These are my ideas. What do you think? And you could have that conversation with me or other professors. But in any case, at some point you make the decision that you want to do the thesis, and you put in the application. The application is just basically a shorter version of the proposal that you've already created for yourself in that previous course. And then what happens is that it goes through, and we help you find a supervisor. And then so sort of stage 2 of it is that you then you move out of the cohort. You move out of being with all the folks at the end of those 24 credits, and you move into that supervisory stage with your supervisor. If you're working with people, you'd submit the research ethics to make sure that you can, that you're doing everything properly, and then you collect your data, and then you start to, that's the second phase, is that you go through that, and then at the end of that you have something that's complete, and then you submit it. So then the third step is that once you've got your thesis submitted, it goes to first to your supervisor, then to a second committee member, which you worked with your thesis supervisor to set up, and then to an external, and the external reads it, and everyone gives a kind of report on that thesis. And usually, again, in my experience, it's very pleasant, lots of really positive feedback. It passes that, or it's recommended to pass, and then you go to the defense. And then in the defense, you have a conversation with the committee, not with the external, but with the two committee members, your first and second members of committee. And, you know, it's a sort of an hour and a half conversation about your work and how things have gone. And it seems like it should be stressful, and it probably is, but it's also really fun. Like it's kind of like a fun, stressful, because at that point, you know that you've passed everything along the way and you're done everything. And this is really an opportunity for you to share your work with you can have friends and family be in that session, that open session, and with your supervisor in the second. And it's just it's a really great opportunity to kind of showcase your research. So that's the thesis. And so that's why that 12 credits is the thesis, because there's a lot of work and a lot of steps that are in there to get you to the end point. Then if you're into research, but you're not really, you're like, I don't know, I don't know if I want to have to write that much, or if I don't know if I really want to have a defense, or it's just, I actually have a couple of other courses that I'm more interested in taking, and I don't want to lose all those credits with the thesis. So I'd like to kind of hedge my bet. That's the research paper. So in that scenario, you go through, you take a couple more courses with the course program-based credits. You get a couple more choices of electives, basically, that you can say, oh, I kind of like that, and I think I would like that. And then you take the 6 credits with the research paper. And in that one, then again, you have a supervisor, and you're in a smaller class, typically sort of 5 to 7 people, and everyone's doing their own projects, but there's a prof there that kind of acts as a supervisor, collective supervisor for all the different projects. And because it's 6 credits, you have sort of, 20 weeks sort of start to finish with this project. So a lot of people use this to, if there's something in their organization that they're currently working in that they wanted to investigate, and they really wanted to bring some rigor to that investigation, they might use this option. It might also just be because they want to do something smaller, or they shop it around, but that's the research paper option. And then the last option or pathway is the course-based. And the course-based is that you take your 30, just like you were doing the research paper, and then you have 6 non-program electives. So that means that you actually get the opportunity to kind of shop around at Royal Roads for things that might be really important for your organization or for you personally. So it might be like, oh, I really want to take that leadership class, or I really wanted to take, this international development course, or whatever sort of floats your boat. You get to kind of choose. And we have a standing agreement with the general studies school that any of their courses you're welcome to take, but you're also able to be able to choose other ones that are out there. It just means that you might need approval, but because it's all at Royal Roads, the approval is just a matter of paperwork, and also whether or not there's enough room in the course, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of people like that option because it gives them an opportunity to be able to kind of shop around. I saw a question that came in here from Mike. It says, if we have 20 weeks for the research paper, how long do we have the thesis? The thesis is like much longer than that, because you will sort of start your thesis. You'll have about the same amount of time as the research paper without those last, right? So you're at 24. So you can imagine that you're about 40 weeks, right? So it's almost like a half a year, I want to say. It's basically sort of from, typically if you started in September, is the timeline that I know the best. Like if you started in September intake, then your second intensive would be done by the fall of your second year. And that's usually when people really ramp up their thesis work. And so then they start their sort of thesis really as being the only thing that they do kind of January, and everyone is done to meet that second year September deadline. So they have about 6 months of getting everything together and writing on it. And then there's a couple of months where it's drafts back and forth from the supervisor to the student to the external, like all that stuff takes time, and it usually takes about 2 months time. But I would say sort of intensive wise, it's about six months that they're working on it. Whereas with the research paper, you would have, you'd finish that and you'd do a couple more courses, and then you would have that stretch to the end. So you'd kind of have about half the amount of time. It's like the timelines are tough to get around, but I hope that gives you a sense of it, Mike. I'll just wait, and if you have a follow-up, we'll come back to it. So what are these core courses that I'm talking about? Well, these are the core courses, like, as I said, communication theory, communication, culture, and organization, which is the OrgComm challenge, research methods, media and technology, which is sort of it's actually a kind of a media history course, which is quite cool. I teach that course. I like it a lot. Communication policy, politics, and law. And then we have applied communication research and research proposals. So again, depending on which pathway because that's where you're sort of starting to think about your pathway. So depending on which pathway you're thinking about going, that course kind of is tailored differently for course-based students than it is for research paper and thesis. Then you have the strategic communication that everyone does, and that's sort of the last hooray or hurrah for everyone is in the same stratcom class together. And then the special topic sort of runs between, usually in the calendar, it kind of moves around, but it usually runs sort of between the applied and the strategic. And that one is, you'll notice, is the one that sort of is slightly different for research, for thesis and research paper. So those are all the courses, and like I said, about 7 of those or 6 of those everyone takes together, and then starts to kind of move in different directions. But those are the main ones. And then the next one, the next slide gives you all of the electives that we have. These are the program-based electives. So strategic digital communication, media production, conflict analysis, development and social change, sustainability, cultural development, organizational design. So these are offered and to the cohort in terms of options, and so people can choose to go into these electives, and we have a process of selection. Of course, it depends on availability and timelines and so on, but these are the electives that are out there. And then if you're in the course-based pathway, then there's some, I'll just give you some highlights on the next slide of the types of courses that people typically find interesting in the gen studies. So Mara, if you want to move forward, I think it's the next slide. I see the same slide. Am I frozen? Are you frozen? Is it the course-based or the yeah, we want to see the gen studies. But anyways, they're from all over, and we can pop a link in there for you to take a look at what kind of courses that you're able. Basically anything at Royal Roads that's a master's level course you're able to take, as long as most people want to take it on their timeline, so that limits the choice in some way. But basically anything that you want to take a look at, you're able to do so. I think that takes us to the admissions process. I don't think that there's anything much more. Oh, what do people do with these degrees? So we have people who land in all kinds of different places and who come into the program from all kinds of different places. So we do have people who kind of just do the straight path. They come straight into the master's from the undergrad, and they might have maybe a year of sort of experience. That's, I would say, is atypical. Usually what we have is people, the sort of typical route is that you have an undergraduate degree and that you start working in comms. You might not have it in communications, but you've been working in some kind of form of communications, in your organization. It just happens to be where you landed. And now you're kind of pushing up against that. It might be like a glass ceiling where you're noticing that everyone around the table sort of has an extra set of letters behind their name, and you're starting to want to sort of get some credentials. And so that's sort of a lot of folks who come in to the MAPC, is that they're at that point. They might have sort of 4 or 5 years of experience. They're kind of at that point where they're either going to transition into a different path for themselves, or they've kind of topped out in their own organization. And so they're looking for that credential. Yeah, that's cool. We're just having some tech issues with the PowerPoint, but that's okay. We're talking about where people are coming in through. So that, that's sort of a group of people. And then we have a decent number of folks who come in from the flex admission. And so these people have a lot more experience, and they just don't meet that traditional sort of cookie cutter box of grad school application. And they might be filmmakers, they might be storytellers in some way, they might be entrepreneurs, they might have run their own consultancy companies. It's really great. That's one thing that I really love about this. I've taught in different institutions. What's great about this institution, especially at the master's level, is that you're in a room with people who, first of all, can challenge you because they know what you're talking about from a practical point of view. They tend to be very motivated, and they're really just sort of curious, and they're interested in the topic, right? And so it's a really fun, dynamic place to teach. And I imagine, I wasn't a student there at Royal Roads, but I imagine as a student it would also be really fun, challenging, and quite interactive with different people. So we have people who've gone on to work at pretty high levels in the Canadian government as communication advisors, and also in provincial governments. So we have pretty decent municipalities and like communication directors for cities and stuff. So government communications, lots of folks get jobs there. We have people who work for Crown, for Crown corporations as well. BC Ferries, BC Transit, Alberta Health, BC Health. We have people, of course, who go into the private sector, and they may work or might have worked or do continue to work in, oil and gas or resource sectors or technology sectors. Lots of folks branch out and run their own shops. Some people go on to teach, they might make a transition because the master's allows them to teach at colleges and different places. And so they take that experience and they really move in a different direction for themselves. We have people who continue in the creative industry, who started in there and they continue, or they may just really something sparks in the program for them and they kind of go in that direction. So it is a really flexible degree. I think it's one of the degrees now that has a lot of and again, I'll put that in sort of inverted commas, but sexiness to it. I think with as whether or not you agree with the politics of Trump, you have to, I think everyone can agree that he put communications on the map as something that that people pay attention to much more so than they ever really did before his presidency. So, all of a sudden people are talking about Twitter. People are seeing his communication officers much more so than other presidencies. So we're having, in Canada, we have more and more people in communications every year as a sector. So it's a really innovative space, and because of technology changes and the pandemic, it's becoming more and more important to organizations. So I think it's a really great time to pursue higher degrees in communications. I think they're going to become more and more valued by organizations. I think that the sort of stereotype of the communication person not having the same clout around in the C-suite is changing. I think communications professionals are changing that. And I think just the nature of our our media ecology and our world is forcing people to recognize that you have to have a good communication strategy if you want to be successful, in any industry. That's a necessary component. So having that strategy is really what this program is about. It's to build on a lot of tactical knowledge that people have and in-field knowledge that people have, but to really leverage strategy and really get you to be a very strategic thinker about what will make communications work for an organization for them to achieve their goals. Right. So that's sort of what it brings. That's where people go, and that's sort of where people have come from to get into the program. And now I'll turn it over to Andrea, who can talk about the pragmatics of applying to the program. And if you have a question for me, I'm around till the end of this, so throw it in the chat, and we'll just kind of put a pin in it, and we'll come back to it. We'll have a few minutes at the end for questions.
Thanks, Chase. What about before we move into the how to apply? I know we don't have the slides right now, but can you talk about the graduate certificate?
Yeah, so the grad cert, thank you. So the grad cert is a great option for folks who aren't like fully ready to commit to the program. The grad cert is 3 courses, and basically they're the same courses as we would offer to the MAPC students. So you're not getting some kind of watered down version or like some kind of different course. You're getting the same course as you would in the program. And in fact, there's a couple of advantages to that. Number one is the quality of the education is better than if it was just like a continuing ed course. And second of all those credits that you bank in those grad cert courses can be directly applied to the degree. So if the timing isn't 100% that you want to enroll this year, but you kind of are anticipating that you will next year, or if you wanted to try it out, those credits can be used towards your degree completion. So there's no like, you take 3, you get credit for 2 kind of thing. It's you take the 3, you get those 3 right directly applied to your transcript, and it can go straight into the degree at Royal Roads. So it's a really great option, and I mean, to be quite frank, it's a generous option because a lot of universities don't offer a kind of one-to-one option like that, where you can take a course without being admitted into the program and have it applied later on in the future. So it's a great option, and it's one of those ones where I think you will know very quickly if the program is for you. And I know year over year we have a lot of people who will take the grad certs, and then they're like, this rocks, I love it, I want more of it, and they'll come right into the MA program, and there they have their 9 credits already secured for them.
Thanks, Chase. And I apologize. Everybody can see just one slide at this time, or you're seeing multiple slides at this time?
No, one.
Perfect.
There's a question here from Bryn. That says, is there a time limit to convert the grad cert to the MA? I don't believe so, because they would be the same. They're on your transcript as credits, right? So there's no expiry date to those, as far as I know. Definitely, I don't believe so. And just, I don't know, we didn't have a chance to talk about the different courses, but if you wanted to if we want to dare to move the PowerPoint back one, I think there you go. So the grad cert is composed of the strategic communications course, which is a core course of the MAPC program, but then two what we would call program electives, right? So one is the strategic digital communication, and the other is the conflict analysis and management. So, so again, they're all there, and you actually get one of the core courses taken care of right off the bat. So those are really, and the reason that those are there is because those typically are very useful for people in a working context who want to apply their education right away to their organizations.
Perfect. Thank you, Chase. So now I'm going to talk about how to apply it. And as Chase said, if you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to type those on the chat box, and we will make sure that we are covering all that information. So at Royal Roads, when you're applying, there is two ways to apply. The first one is standard admissions, and the second one is flexible admissions. However, when you're applying, there is no one box that you need to click. The person that is assessing your application will decide if you're coming through standards or flexible admissions. So standard admissions are people that have completed 4 years of undergrad degree from a post-secondary institution, or comparable. Sometimes when people come from a different countries, maybe undergrad looks slightly different. And we are looking for people that are evidence of having sufficient knowledge, skills, and abilities to complete a demanding academic course of study at master level. And the last piece that we're looking for is at least 2 years of work experience or volunteer experience. From flexible admissions, are the people that maybe don't have 4 years of undergrad degree. However, they have the equivalent of 90 credits, that they will be most of the time the equivalent of 3 years of undergrad degree from a recognized post-secondary institution. And once again, for flexible admissions, there are many different scenarios on how your application can look like depending on your career path. So if maybe there is something that you see that you fit between maybe the bullet point number 1 and between the bullet point number 2, feel free to reach out to our enrollment advisors, because they will be able to assess you and provide more support and answer any of your questions. So basically what I wanted to say, there is no a white and black answer about flexible admissions. We are always looking for a combination of work experience and that education credits that you have, because we understand that everybody has a different path in your personal and in your professional life. So for people that have those between those 2 or 3 years, that will be the equivalent between 60 to 90 credits or relevant work. Oh my goodness. Between those 60 and 90 credits on the post-secondary education, we are looking for at least 5 years of relevant work experience in a leadership capacity. And people with less than 2 years of relevant post-secondary education, it should have at least 10 years of high-level professional communication experience in a leadership capacity. And once again, as part of our personal approaches, that we'll be assessing case-by-case basis. So as I said, our enrollment advisors and our faculty and our admissions advisors, they take the time to look each of your application and make sure that we have all the information that we know. It will be very common for enrollment or admissions advisors to reach out to people just to make sure to clarify any information that might not be clear for us. For the people that are coming through academic, through flexible admissions, and even though for some of those people that come through standard admissions, we always recommend to complete the academic writing and the critical thinking course. Basically, what these courses do is prepare you to be more successful in an academic world. We see that maybe people have been out of school from a long time, and yes, you have a great writing skills, you have been working maybe for many years, you have a very professional mindset of way of doing, but for academic settings, we require a different kind of writing. So that course, it will help you to prepare yourself to be successful in the program. We hear sometimes people that didn't take the course, they wish they knew about this course because they can see the difference between those people that took the course beforehand to help them to be more prepared during the program. And that academic writing and a critical thinking program, they're offered through different times of the year, and they're fully online. So now the exciting piece, how to apply. So first you need to complete an online application. This is a cost of $126.28. Once you complete that online application, you need to submit the following documents. These documents, again, is for us to learn more about who you are and why you're applying to the program. So the first document, there are official transcripts. To be official, they have to come, well, they used to come in a sealed envelope, but as COVID has changed the ways of doing, a lot of universities are sending those transcripts directly to Royal Roads. So maybe choose the option that works better for you, but they have to be official transcripts. Some of you maybe have been out of school for a long time and you don't remember how you did. So I highly recommend to get one for you and one that is sent directly to us. The next document is a detailed resume. We're not looking for a professional resume as when you are applying for a job that normally is at 2 pages. Some people, it would take 3-4 pages to give us all the details that we want to see. So for example, we want to know about your education. Maybe you complete 2 years in a program and then you move to a different program. We want to see both of them. We always want to learn more about your career. And when we're talking about your career, we don't only need to know about the title, but we also want to know more about what kind of responsibilities you had in each of the roles. So you can give us either bullet points or a small paragraph of that responsibilities that you have the role. And of course, we want to know about the timeline, how long you were in each of those roles. We also want to learn about if you are part of any association or any affiliation. Please feel free to add that information as well as if you're part of a volunteer organization, maybe you coach the soccer team of your kids, or maybe you are part of the board of directors of one of the nonprofits. We want to see those as well. The next document, I'm a graduate from Royal Roads. I did another master, and I always tell people that my favorite document was the personal statement, and it's the time I pause to ask myself, why do I want to apply into this program? What also I'm bringing into this program, and how this program is going to help me to move forward in my personal and professional career. So there are more details that we are looking into that personal statement, and I know Christine has been sharing some links on the chat box that you will find useful. But basically, we want to know about your motivations. The next document are the letters of reference. Those letters can be one academic and one professional. However, if you have been out of school for a long time, we will always accept 2 of letters of reference from the professional background. Some tip that I want to share with you: if you feel comfortable, please share your personal statement with those people that are writing those letters of reference, so they have a better understanding of why you're applying to the program, and maybe they can give a specific example or an opportunity that they have to work with you. Key dates for our MA Professional Communications. Our next start date is May 3rd, and then the following one is September 13th. For the May 3rd, we're looking for application deadline April, and then for the September, it will be June. For the graduate certificate, our next intake will be May 17th, and the application deadline will be once again in February. Financial aid. This is something that I always encourage people to reach out, to connect, and learn more about the different options that might be available for you. So depending if you're applying to the MA versus the graduate certificate, there might be some scholarships, awards available for you, and also depending which province you are coming or in which industry you are currently working, there might be other options available. So please reach out to us. We have a great link that I also just saw that Christine post on our chat box, but is Financial Aid Awards at Royal Roads. And in that link, you will be able to find a lot of information that will be very useful for you. And if you have additional questions, there's always a way for you to connect with us by email or reaching out directly through the phone. And if you would like to talk to Christine, she's part of our enrollment advisors. You can reach out to her by phone or by email, but also in the chat we have today with us Kelsey. Kelsey works in the International Enrollment Advisor. So if you are an international student, please reach out to Kelsey and she will be able to provide additional information. And in this slide, you can find the international team's email as well. So that is all the information that I have right now about the application process and other things that I believe it will help you to apply to Royal Roads. So with that, I wanted to pass. I see Amara just came back. Welcome back, Amara. So any additional comments, Chase, or any other information you would like to add?
No, I think, I think it's a great program. It's got a really good reputation with people who take it. They enjoy it a lot. They oftentimes recommend their colleagues to take it. I'm happy to answer questions. We have a few more minutes here, so please don't be shy. Like if you're thinking it, other people are thinking it. If you don't want to ask the question now, I'll put my email in the chat and you're welcome to send me a note as well. And we can set a time to chat, or I can try to answer your questions by email.
Thank you, Chase. And I also have a comment. So if you would like to connect with current students or alumni with Chase or any other people from the team at Royal Roads, Christine and the Enrollment advisors are always happy to facilitate that process. I know sometimes here from an alumni or a current student will help you to understand a little bit about that experience from the student perspective. So feel free to reach out to us. We will be always happy to make those connections as well. Chase, actually, I have a question for you. Like, who are the, like, I know we talk about what people are doing after the program, but maybe if you want to tell us a little bit about who are the people in the current cohort, maybe do we have people across Canada, maybe age, yeah, any insights about the people that are in the current program?
Yeah, so I mean, I think because I've been teaching in the program before I was the program head since I started, so I can sort of say that over the last sort of 7 years, I'd say that, you know, we always have a really interesting mix of people from across Canada. I don't know why, but we tend to have more Albertans and BCers than we do people from Quebec and Ontario, but we always have like a pretty decent cohort of people from Ontario. And throughout, like all the way across Canada, recently we've had a few folks from the Maritimes, and we've had a few folks from like Yukon and Northwest Territories. So we really do have people from all across Canada. We do have a few folks that are international or have just come to Canada recently. And so there's also a little bit of an international mix to the group. And yeah, I think a lot of people are transitioning when they come to the program. So they've decided that they want to make kind of like a lateral, but like a kind of upward lateral movement. So they're maybe not 100% wanting to say exactly where they're at, but they want to look down the road to something slightly different. And so, you know, like I said, I think they're all sort of, they tend to be sort of around, maybe, I don't know, I don't know their ages off the top of my head. Neha maybe knows the average age, but I would ballpark it as sort of being like kind of mid-30s is the sort of the sort of, you know, the average. We do have some people who are older who've decided that they want to come back to school after a pretty rich career, and then we do have some people who are younger who have kind of just gone straight through from their BA into the MA. I saw a question come in earlier from Bryn that I didn't want to lose. It says, is there a leadership communication strand, or would this be a self-study research direction? Well, it kind of like, it depends on how you wanted to do it, Bryn, and that speaks again to the flexibility of the program. But you could, for example, choose the course-based option, which then you could take 2 courses that were actually from leadership, and that would fit into your schedule. So you could have like course-based options there that would be more on the leadership area. You could, like you suggested here, have a research paper that's about communication leadership. and or you could do a thesis, and any one of those would give you a different kind of experience. And yeah, a lot of times people typically take a thesis route if they really want to dig deep into, they really have a sense of what they want, like they're curious about a question, then they kind of dig deep, and that really builds a strong reservoir of expertise. But then there's other people who also want to have that kind of like almost like a minor or a major, and in that case they can play with those. If they're in the course base, they can kind of play that way with the choice of their electives. So it can kind of be however you want, but we don't have like majors or like specializations in the program as such.
Awesome. Thank you, Chase. And I should apologize for my internet completely crashing earlier. So that's just the joys of working in a virtual environment. So thank you, everybody, for jumping in and staying on the call. I think we have a question, time for probably one more question, and then we'll have to wrap up today's session. I'm looking in the chat here.
I guess I should give one shout out that one of our students, Andrew Lim, he's currently got a film that he's made, and it's showing at film festivals around the country. Yeah. And there's a story, I think if you dig around with Andrew Lim's name in Royal Roads, there's a little story right up about him and the movie. I think I want to say it's something related to Madonna. I don't know. I should know these things, but I've forgotten. But yeah, it sounds pretty interesting.
And did you tell everybody about the communication conference that we hosted last week?
No, I didn't.
What? Do you want to do a quick overview of that? And I'll share the link in the chat, because it would be really great if the people here checked out the recordings from it, because it was a pretty powerful conference.
Yeah, we had this great conference last week that the SCC hosted, and that Imera and Andrea were part of in organizing as well. And we have all the videos now that are uploaded, and I think there's a link now in the chat that you can check out. And really interesting, diverse group of presenters about ethics and communication. So we talked about race, we talked about gender, we talked about inclusion, diversity, but we also talked about hunting, and we talked about healthcare, we talked about Trump. Of course, we can't not talk about Trump. We talked about art, and so it was a really good event, and I think it gives you kind of a flair. If you're interested in communications, you could take a look there, and it'll give you a sense of the kinds of things that you could do. Some of our grads were presenting, like Dr. Wayne Clark. He did his MAPC with us, and then he went on and got a PhD, and now he's got this fantastic title of, I think, like Indigenous Health at University of Alberta or something like this. So that gives you, again, a really great trajectory of what a degree at Royal Roads can lead to. The intensive is a residency yes. So Bryn, yeah, typically it's a 2-week session on campus. And what we've been doing for the COVID version of that, the pandemic version of that, is that we have 2 weeks. We still have the 2 weeks where we have synchronous sessions. So what happens, right, is that you're in Zoom a lot with your profs for those 2 weeks, and that's how we're running it. So you still get to book time off of your work, and you can tell your partner that, hey, I'm in the room, and deal with the kids. And you can, some people even suggested maybe getting going to the cabin, or but it's not like being on, not like being at Xavier's School of the Gifted for 2 weeks, but it's still a great experience.
Awesome. And I'm looking at the time here. It's 1:30. So what we have is a recording of the session, and we'll be sending it out to everybody by email later this afternoon. And if you have any questions at all, I know you have multiple channels that you can reach us on. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending today.
Thank you.